Thank you. Right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It has gone 6 o'clock, so we'll make a start. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Civic Honours Subcommittee. The first agenda item is the evacuation procedure, but as far as I can tell, everybody here is aware of the evacuation procedure, so I'm not going to read that out. Do we have any apologies? No. Okay, thank you. That leads us on to agenda item number 3, which is the minutes of the last meeting of the 23rd of February. Is everyone happy that I sign those as a true and accurate record? Okay. Oh, Councillor Clark.
I need to abstain from that, Chair. I wasn't present at the last meeting. Sorry, I need to abstain from that vote as I wasn't present at the last meeting.
I think that's fair enough, Councillor Clark. I think everyone else here was present. As we've had a change in mayor since the last meeting. Thank you. That leads us on to agenda item number 4, which is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations that aren't already printed on the agenda? No. The only one, it's really a declaration of contact really than interest, but I've had representations from Councillor Damon Brown in support of agenda item number 6. He emailed me in support of that. So just to say that I have received that. That leads us on to agenda item number 5, which is public consultation. I'm aware that we have Mr. Margrave who wishes to speak on agenda item number 6. It is agenda item number 6, isn't it, Mr. Margrave? Yeah. And from Mr. Hancock, again on agenda item number 6. So I don't propose to take anything out of order. We'll take them in the order that they're printed. So that moves us on to agenda item number 6 itself, which is street naming in honour of Sergeant Simon Valentine. Would you wish to present that report, Phil?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This is the report that was requested at the last meeting in connection with street naming and in particular honouring both Sergeant Valentine and Frank Parsons, both of whom are well known to the Council. The position as far as the report is concerned is, I think, fairly clear and succinct. We have put forward some proposals as far as Sergeant Simon Valentine is concerned. In terms of Councillor Frank Parsons, I would say that there is already a street now named after him, which was, I think, relatively recent in terms of that, as well as Jesse Owen and one or two other known former soldiers well known to the borough. So the proposal, I'll just deal with the addendum in a moment, but the proposal is to deal specifically with Simon Valentine tonight, Chair, specifically. There's one slight alteration to the report in that the recommendation, and it's an open recommendation really, Chair, but we were just looking at the, should we say, the most efficient way of doing this. The recommendation is to look to rename Church Way, not Church Walk, and you've had the addendum to clarify that. Church Walk is the footway that runs from alongside the cemetery towards Saunders Hall. The actual name that we were looking for was Church Way, which is the muster point for where the Armistice Parade musters for its annual march round to the cemetery. The alternative that has been proposed is obviously to look at a section of Rye Peace Ringway. To that effect, Chair, I should mention that you have got written submissions from a number of people. That we have one from Carol Valentine, who is Simon's mother, supporting Rye Peace Ringway. We've also just received a letter from Craig Tracy MP, which is also with members, which is, again, I think, looking to support Rye Peace Ringway, principally because of its proximity to the saluting dais, where obviously the Armistice Parade takes place. You also have Chair, and I appreciate Mr Hancock's is here, but Mr Hancock's has also made a written submission, but I understand he also wishes to speak in connection with Frank Parsons specifically. Chair, I don't wish to add anything else to the report. It is obviously open to you to consider whichever section of street you wish to consider in terms of renaming. There is the one caveat that I should just mention, and that is that it is a legal process to rename a street. If there is an objection, it can end up before the magistrates, and we will be then at the mercy of the magistrates in terms of a final decision. I appreciate Councillor Clark will have to declare an interest and not deal with it on that occasion.
He's on the reserve bench.
Just as well. And we'll be, it will be whatever it is on the day. So we've opted for Church Way simply because we thought that that would have less potential for objections, but of course you can never tell, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. I was actually going to raise that we had those statements from Craig Tracy MP and Mrs Valentine and Mr Hancock's, but he is here. Could we please note them under public consultation that there are statements from those two people as well, please? Can I just, before I bring in public speakers, can I just ask a question about, or maybe a couple of questions about the Frank Parsons element, which is at the last meeting we asked for contact with any known family member or representative of his estate. Has that been possible?
We've not managed to locate any specific relative of Frank Parsons. I did hear last week, actually, that potentially, and I haven't been able to follow this up, this is anecdotal, that his son-in-law may well be still a resident in the borough, and it turns out may well have been Les Jackson, or still is Les Jackson, because Les is still with us. But I'll need to catch up with Les and just clarify whether that's true. But as I say, Chair, the difficulty we would have in terms of naming a street is that having already named one street after him, it then becomes problematic, not least for the post office, in terms of misdelivery of mail between addresses. So I think we need to be a bit careful around that. And I can speak from experience because I live on Hinckley Road in Nuneaton, and I regularly get the Hinckley Road Stoke Golding post regularly. So there you go.
I was going to ask as one of my follow-up questions was about the issue if we were to go down the route of renaming a road after Frank Parsons. Besides what you've just said, are there any other legal implications that we might end up with, or would we have challenges from the Royal Mail, etc.? Because would they be a consultee?
There's always the possibility of a challenge. The Royal Mail may take issue with it because it becomes confusing if you've got multiple names that are the same, effectively. I can't think of in terms of the process itself, that there isn't very much by way of criteria within the legislation that says you couldn't. I mean, obviously we'd have to look at the policy that we've approved to determine whether or not it would be appropriate to do it in these circumstances. But beyond that, there's nothing else within certainly within the legislation that would prevent that.
Okay, thank you, Phil. I just wanted to raise those points because I thought it might be important before we have public and councillors speaking on that. So I will move on now to public speaking, and I have Mr Margrave first.
Mr Chairman, I'm here today to support the recommendation of renaming Church Way to honour the town's fallen hero, Simon Valentine. As I previously said, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends, John 15:13. In 2009, Sergeant Valentine, aged just 29, gave the ultimate sacrifice for us all. He is one of Bedworth's greatest men, and this honour is rightly deserved. On the issue of point 3.1 and 3.5 in the report, another of Bedworth's great men is Frank Parsons. Frank is a legend in the town, led the parade and chaired the Armistice Committee for generations, served his country, community and was a prisoner of war. When we asked about renaming Rye Peace Ringway after renaming the Ringway Frank Parsons Parade, no one said then a road in Ash Green had already been selected. We have plenty of similar names and our proposal is entirely different. I understand that Frank had no connection to Ash Green and was a Collycroft lad. He deserves better recognition than a hidden side street. Bedworth is known nationally as a town that never forgets because of Frank and his committee. He is the reason it is what it is today. I appreciate the council have not been able to trace Frank's family, but I have contact details if that helps. Instead of ending any chance of a Frank Parsons parade on the Rye Peace Ringway, will the committee defer point 3.5, call Frank's family, and also consult the community to ask their views, because the local community really support this. But tonight is about Sergeant Simon Valentine. I just don't want us to dishonour Frank by forgetting or failing what he has done for Bedworth. Finally, I'd just like to say, and this is why we're all here, is the exhortation that they shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. And I hope by this action you are remembering them. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Margrave. Any points of clarification? No? Okay. Mr. Hancox.
Thank you, Chair. My initial concern was to do with the church walk, church way thing, and it was purely because I realised when I saw it that the names were wrong. It's church way where the armistice parade muster and not church walk. So I'm more than happy for that to go through as it is. The second point that I wanted to make was really in relation to the suggestions regarding Frank Parsons. Again, as has just been said, he's a well-known figure in Bedworth. But he also already has a prominent memorial right in the town centre in All Saints Square. And on balance, we should also remember some of the history of why places, street names have become, and particularly Rye Peace and that Spitalfields area between the, at the back of the Civic Hall, but particularly from the cemetery along to the mini roundabout at King Street. That was like the exact area of Rye Peace and Spitalfields. The rest of that Rye Peace Ringway that runs from the mini roundabout all the way up to the bingo hall on Leicester Street, Leicester Road, there's maybe an opportunity there if people so wished. It's also interesting, Chair, that Frank Parsons lived many years in Chamberlain Street, which is directly off that long part of Rye Peace Ringway. So, there could be an argument of doing it there. But sometimes I think there's a compromise, Chair, and it might be for a consideration that if you decide, because of what's been said in the report, not to rename Rye Peace Ringway, and it might apply to, in other circumstances, is maybe us move to a scheme of perhaps putting a blue plaque on the front of a house where they've lived. And Frank Parsons lived in Chamberlain Street for a very long time. I personally don't know about whether there's any family still remaining, but it may be that whoever's the occupant of that house, would maybe go along with an idea like that. It's good. I think it's a good idea, and something for the children and school kids and that can see and ask questions about what's that on there for. But certainly, Chair, I would ask that short section of Rye Peace isn't considered to be renamed. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hancox. Anyone have any points of clarification? You looked as if you were going to go there for a minute, Councillor Clark. Okay, thank you very much. Technically, we have to have a motion to debate, don't we? Does anyone have a motion they particularly want to move, or I'm happy to move as printed just for the purposes of starting off debate. So I'll move the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2 for debate purposes only. Does that receive a seconder? Councillor Kovetkovic, thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Gobby was the first hand that I saw. Any member wish to come in? Councillor Kovacevic.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, I mean, having listened to both speakers, I think there's obviously a broad agreement between probably ourselves and the speakers in terms of how we should go. Obviously, we need to make sure that we are naming the sort of the right streets after the right sort of individuals. And on the matter of Sergeant Simon Valentine, looking at the statement which his mother, Carol Valentine, has submitted, she does make very clear that the family preference would be for Rye Peace Ringway. And I think where possible, if it's within our gift to do so, that we should try and honour that. I know that people have other ideas, but if that's what the family wants, I think that should sort of take precedence over any other part of the decision-making process that we possibly have.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kovacevic. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair. Just listening to that point, it's right that we actually honour these people, most definitely. And I think you make a good point insofar as the family have identified a location where they would like to see that name be considered. Obviously, it has to go out for consultation on whatever. But I'm minded to support their request, really. It's the section between Coventry Road and, is it Bulkington Lane, King Street? Yeah. It does lend itself to that military area because we've got the peace podium there, we've got the march down there from the Remembrance Cenotaph. So I think it does lend itself to that type of thing. I understand also the fact that they form up in Church Way, Church, I'm saying the right one there, Church Way. But I'm also very mindful of the fact that anything to do with churches, you start getting into historic statements and reasons why that probably was the name of that way in history sort of thing. So I'm a little bit cautious on going with the recommendation as set out there, Chair, and I'd probably be supportive of the Rye Peace Ringway section. The only other point I would make, not specifically not Simon Valentine, but I'd rather see Sergeant Valentine myself identifying that it's a military officer position sort of thing, but that's just something perhaps for consideration with the family. I'm not sure, but that's just my thoughts at the moment, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. I'm just conscious that a lot of people have differing views on this, and it's going to be challenging to try and find a way forward, but I think we're all agreed on the principle of doing something to honour where we can. It's just the finer details, I think, are probably the more difficult ones to nail down. Anyone else have any comments that they wish to raise? Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with Councillor Clark that Sergeant Valentine is probably the best way to go. Would it be worth moving the recommendation in principle and requesting that the officers then go back to the family to see which they would prefer? Because obviously we don't want to name something after one of their loved ones if it's not their preference. Would that be a way forward?
Thank you, Councillor Croft. Any other comment? Councillor Golby.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best move. I don't think we're going to get a full resolution today, so I think it definitely needs more involvement with the family. As far as the section goes, yeah, in the Rye Peace Ringway in front of the peace podium, I think is probably the most appropriate one. And actually, I would agree with other things, just going on a little bit of a side note with the Frank Parsons. I would exercise a note of caution because we're always getting different people's mail at our house because our road shares the same name as another road, and it ends up with lots of confusion. So I'm with you on that one. I think if there is a road already named after Frank Parsons, we probably need to rethink that one.
Okay, thank you. I think the issue about Simon versus Sergeant can be resolved in an amendment by delegation to the relevant officer. I am concerned about leaving it as just Valentine Way, because in time people would forget what that is about, and people would naturally assume it's something to do with Valentine's Day, etc., and that isn't what this is about. This is about honouring a fallen hero from our community. So I think we can delegate that to the relevant officers, which would be yourself, wouldn't it, Phil? Because I think it has to be Sergeant or Simon. I think we ought to take the family's wishes into consideration. I understand the point that Mr. Hancock's raises about Rye Peace Ringway, although it's my understanding that the road itself is actually probably 1960s, 70s design. It isn't a historic road itself as it is, but I can see the point about the name and the usage around that area. But I think we can keep that in with the rest of Rye Peace Ringway after the island at King Street, and Bulkington Road. Sorry, cold still, a bit foggy. With the point on Frank Parsons, it is a very difficult point, because rightly or wrongly, there is a road named after him, probably not in the place we would like. And normally it only goes to relevant ward councillors about road naming on certain things, so it wasn't something which was brought up wider. And I think if it had been, with an explanation, then perhaps that might have been picked up before. But we are where we are, and we have to deal with that situation. Now, we could look at renaming that road, but I think that creates issues in and of itself. Or do we find a way around it? Because you could, for example, name a building after Frank Parsons or something else like that, which would distinguish from a road, would it not? So that could get around the particular issue. Now, I don't know the whys and wherefores, and I'm only thinking out aloud here, but would the Peace Podium itself be better renamed as Frank Parsons Podium, as he was instrumental in getting that underway? I don't know. I'm putting it out there for consideration. But is there anywhere else which would be suitable in the town centre for a Frank Parsons building or memorial hall or whatever? I think that may be a more suitable route to go down to avoid the impasse we seem to be at with the road. So I don't know whether that's something which could be considered, but I certainly think we have to keep to first principles, which is that we need to ask the remaining family if at all possible. So I think we need to keep that in abeyance, because I understand that people have fond memories in Bedworth of him, but the reality of the situation is they are not his next of kin or nearest family. And the last thing I would want to do is cause distress to any remaining relative, however incidental they might be. They are still, either by marriage or by blood, his family, and we have to keep those first and foremost in mind. So I'm happy to move as an amendment that the road between Rye Peace Ringway between Coventry Road and the island with Bulkington Road, King Street, is renamed to either Sergeant Valentine or Simon Valentine, to be delegated to the Director for Planning and Regulation in consultation with the leader and the Valentine family, Mrs. Valentine, and that then the delegated authority be given to the Director. And point 2.3 should include that further investigations are made with the Parsons to locate any remaining relatives of the Parsons family, and a further report be brought to the committee. I saw some nods about possibly looking at a building for Frank Parsons, certainly amongst some in the audience, whether a particular look could be thought about that as well. Whether there's anything of ours, indeed, that we could look at there. I don't know, asking the question. Before I move on, does anyone wish to second the amendment? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I've just got the map up, and it's just to clarify, is the piece we're talking about Rye Peace Ringway between King Street roundabout, Bulkington Road, and then at the other end it's High Street and Coventry Road? Is that, yeah, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, the part directly in front of the podium.
Yeah, so I'm happy to second that then.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clark.
So I wasn't aware that there's already memory of Frank Parsons, other than the street that's recently been named, but has been identified. There's something off All Saints Square, by all accounts, recognising him. I think we perhaps need a bit more information before we decide on what we can do to honour Frank further. I think that it's right we should honour him, and it's right that he's been honoured, but we need to make sure that what we do doesn't conflict with any of the family, and what we do is recognised and accepted by the people of Bedworth as well, to be honest with you.
Well, I hope my amendment goes some way towards dealing with that, Councillor Clark, that we make further efforts to try and get in touch with any possible relatives of the Parsons family and bring a future report to this committee and possibly look at a building rather than a road to avoid the conflict with road naming. Unless, of course, there's any other way that we can get around the road naming, but it just seemed like an obvious thing to me. If we can't do a road, a building might be more suitable. Do you have anything you wish to come back on, Phil, on that?
Just one point, Chair. Obviously, the suggestion of the Peace Podium, that is owned, I think, is probably the best way to describe it, by the Armistice Committee. They constructed it, and it's their own licence, if you like. So if we were to, if that was to move forward, I think we would need to consult with the Armistice Committee and get their agreement to that as well as part of that process. But certainly the first stage would be to try and locate the family members and get a view from them, and then we could talk about buildings or podiums, etc. after that.
Yeah, Councillor Golby.
Just to clarify on Frank Parsons, the renaming. So the Peace Podium, if it was to be renamed, could be renamed without edict from this council, because it isn't ours as such. So that takes this motion out of service. It's not necessary. So if the Armistice Committee wanted to come forward and rename the Peace Podium to the Frank Parsons Peace Podium, they could do that. And just so I'm clear, there's already a road named after Frank Parsons, and there's a memorial as well. Is that correct?
There's a stone, a memorial stone, in All Saints Square on the raised. If you're actually in the square, it's raised on the grassed area in front of the church. If you're coming from the almshouses,
right,
up there.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kovacevic.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just on the point of whether we go Simon Valentine or Sergeant Valentine, I know obviously we want to have a big input from the family on that, as is right and proper. But just thinking about the military conventions that you have in place, he will have worked very hard to do his section commander's battle course, his platoon sergeant's battle course, to earn that rank. And they are very hard courses to get through. Trust me, I've known a lot of people who have done them. They're not easy by any stretch of imagination. However, the military convention is you don't use military rank unless it's field officer and above, which is normally major. So that would normally be the case. So majors, lieutenant colonels, brigadiers, generals, etc. You don't normally use lowered ranks, even for sort of like captains and lieutenants in the army. I've also don't think I've ever seen a street that's been named sergeant or captain or major. It's normally the name of the person. So I have seen a few that have been named after sort of military heroes, but I've never seen one that has the rank. So whether there is a guiding principle. That said, though, I mean, if that's what the family wish, I would be happy to get 100% behind that as well, because I think it's really important that the family have it done to their satisfaction and have Sergeant Simon Valentine remembered in the way they want him remembered. But it's worth sort of just raising that point in terms of there may well be that convention there. I'm not an expert on it by any stretch of imagination, but I think it's one that's worth looking into. In terms of the Frank Parsons, sort of peace podium. I think if you name the peace podium after him, I know it's probably not within our gift to do so because it probably does come down to the Armistice Committee. My worry is then, does it take focus off all the other veterans who that podium would then also represent? Because when you go there, you know, obviously people think about a wide range of people within their own families and communities that perhaps have been lost. And if you attach a name of one person, does that then have a detrimental effect on how other people would then perceive that podium? So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kovacevic. In terms of the name versus rank, I think we can be guided by the family on that. I think a lot of people in the area actually know Sergeant Valentine, and that may be a trigger, or it may be that the family wants Simon to honour Simon Valentine. I really don't mind which, but as I think we've all agreed, it should be down to the wishes of the family, and if whichever one comes out, I would happily endorse, depending on what Mrs. Valentine says. In terms of the podium, I accept it is fully within the remit of the Armistice Committee. I raise it as an item for debate, not a firm idea, but for debate. There would be those who would say that without Frank Parsons, you would not have a podium to march past, because without him, there would be no continuing Armistice Committee, which was what generated the idea. But it may not be suitable, and that's down to the Armistice Committee. But I think the idea about naming something after him may resolve the impasse about a road.
Yeah,
because
Mr.
we're stuck
Chairman,
with the road.
I would happily support naming whether it's a public building or, I mean, even Mr. Hancock's suggestion of sort of having a system where we have plaques for people who have done exceptional service within our community. You know, either of those would work for me personally, and I suspect they probably would for a lot of people up and down the borough.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Golby.
Can I just potentially a controversial viewpoint is that if we've already got 2 memorials to Frank Parsons and we add another one, does that not then detract from the opportunity to name the 3rd after somebody else? Because we don't have a massive amount of real estate that we can do these things with, and I'm conscious that we might be focusing too much on one person, which then knocks out the opportunities for other people. So I'm just putting that viewpoint into the room as well, because I think it's something that we do need to consider. I'm sure that there's going to be more people coming along once these honours start to take root that actually we could be missing an opportunity with if we do that.
And that may be a point which is raised by the family if we are able to contact them. The point has been raised, we have to respond to it. Let's see what comes back from the family if we're able to locate a representative. That may be their viewpoint. I don't know, but if we don't ask them, we will never know, will we? So, but I think we have an amended motion. Do we need to vote on making it an amendment if there is all a common agreement? Does everyone accept the amendment as friendly and to keep that as a substantive? Yeah. Okay then. So everyone in fact, does anyone need a recap? Right. So the. Hang on, I've got to think about it now. Phil, do you want to? You made notes, Phil.
So, Chair, the first, the substantive motion is that Rye Peace Ringway between Coventry Road and King Street be renamed after Sergeant Valentine, name to be agreed, in honour of Simon Valentine. The second is that delegated authority be given to myself as Director Planning and Regulation in consultation with yourself and the family to confirm the name and obviously to implement the proposals. And then the third one is further investigation to locate a member of the Parsons family and to consider alternatives to street naming to honour Frank Parsons.
So is everyone clear on what that is? Okay, thank you. In which case, I'll move it to the vote. All those in favour, please show. Okay, that is unanimous, and that is carried, so that will be recommended to Cabinet. Okay. Okay, thank you very much everyone for the public speaking. We'll just have a 5-minute break while you escort them out. Is that correct, Victoria? Just leave it. We won't turn the mics on. Right, can we progress with business then, please? We've let our guests out of the building. So that moves us on to agenda item number 7, which is the Nuneaton Bedworth Award of Merit. Mr. Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, this was requested by the subcommittee almost this time last year, and it was to look at an award scheme for the Borough, a civic honours scheme, and it was specifically, I think, Chair, I think you named it the Award of Merit. What Ian has done for us, and I should say Ian sends his apologies, he couldn't make it this evening, so he asked me to deal with this, is he's effectively put a starter for 10 in the appendix, at Appendix A, as really to try and bring everything together so that you've got all the different levels of award. At the moment, the criteria is still a little bit sketchy. I think it's really there specifically to give you the opportunity to sort of flesh it out a little bit in terms of what you envision for the different levels in terms of particularly the order of merit, if you like, in terms of what is the criteria for that, and it sort of sets it out so that you can see the sort of the different levels and layers of award that the council does either currently give or would give in these arrangements. So particularly if you look at page 17, you've got the schedule of awards there, which is everything that we do at the currently, plus it's inserted the proposals that you're considering tonight. So Chair, I'm happy to take questions. I'll feed anything back to Ian as and when, but it's for you now as a subcommittee to consider criteria and make some recommendations.
Okay, thank you, Phil. So in order to enable debate, I'll move the recommendations as printed. Does that receive a seconder for debate purposes only? Councillor Croft. Councillor Clark, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I have read the report, despite people thinking that perhaps not. My query, probably around this would be, at the moment we do have the Mayor's award, civic award for civic service. And I'm very mindful that a lot of people help the Mayor, both with his charities and in other ways throughout the year. And it has previously been in the past recognised that the Mayor will or can give an award in recognition of that service that's been given to him, or to him and the council, because more often than not it's beneficial to the mayor, but it's also beneficial to the council at the end of the day. So I'd like to see something in there where there is still a mayor's award, to be honest with you, whether it's part of the recommendations of a civic award, but I would like to see there still be a mayor's award in there rather than it taken out as part of a committee decision, I think, Chair. So I'll listen to what members have to say on that point.
Councillor Golby.
I was under the impression that this was separate to those, and that the Mayor's Award is just that, the Mayor's Award. This is an award of the council, so it's slightly different. I thought the two processes run on a twin track, so they don't kind of affect each other. That was my understanding of this. I didn't anticipate that this was going to take precedence or remove the Mayor's Award, because the Mayor's Award is just that, and it comes out of a sort of a separate sideline, so to speak.
Councillor Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that's right, because the Mayor has always had at his or her discretion to the ability to award the borough badge in a certificate or pencil cases or whatever it is that awarded to visiting school children in the Mayor's Parlour. I think this is worth doing, and this is separate because, first of all, because this formalises the process for a separate award, and it also opens it to public nomination and third-party nomination, because, of course, the previous award, the badge, is effectively at mayoral discretion. It's people who Mr. Mayor or Madam Mayor think have contributed to the borough or their charity or done something worthy of the council, whereas this is allowing citizens of the borough to nominate to us people they think are worthy of recognition. So I do think there's a distinction. I do think it's worth doing, and I suppose that is something I was mulling this. What actually does the award entail? Is it a separate badge? Is it a separate certificate to the ones that Mr. Mayor already hands out? So that might be worth discussing this evening, and how we reach a decision on that. And while I have the microphone, Mr. Chairman, the other thing I did think about while reading the papers was in the appendix subsection E, and I'm not wedded to this, it's just worthy of consideration. Is it worth including a requirement for a seconder in the nomination process? Because I mean, Murphy's Law now will get nobody, but just to try and weed out potentially frivolous submissions if anybody could just put their own name in or submit anybody at any time. So that might be worth considering, Mr. Chairman. But, thank you.
Councillor, you've already spoken once, Councillor Clark, so I'll bring Councillor Kovetkovic in.
Sorry, Councillor Clark. I broadly support what we've got in front of us. In terms of the Mayor's Award, I mean, I think, yes, the Mayor does need to have the ability to, and within their own gift, to propose, I think, a separate award. I would heartily support that, because I think there are people who do a lot to support, get behind the Mayor in their mayoral year, whether it's help with the raising of funds for charity or other things that they may well come in to do. So I'd quite like to sort of see that, and I'd wholeheartedly support what Councillor Croft has just said, because you did steal my thunder, Councillor, in terms of having, I think, I was going to say two sets, a seconder and at least one other. I think, I mean, I know with the honours, I think, because I was looking at sort of putting forward a few people within my own ward for honours, and I believe there it's got to be at least one other letter of support. I would like to probably see 2 letters of support, because if they are such a great person, that should not be too difficult to find, really. But I think, again, it will get rid of any sort of silly or vexatious sort of applicants being put forward. We don't want a Boaty McBoatface type situation coming forward, I think. We want people who really do and have done amazing things in the borough. I know there are a lot of people, and we do want to make sure those honours and awards are going to those people, and not because somebody's got home from the pub at 11 o'clock at night and thought, wouldn't it be funny to nominate my mate? So, yeah, I think, if we had that, I'd feel a little bit happier. But, I mean, otherwise, I'm pretty happy with I'm seeing in front of us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm somewhat reassured insofar as it's not recommended to supersede an opportunity for the Mayor to be able to make nominations. If that's the case, and it's not going to detract from the Mayor's ability to do that, I'm reasonably happy with the proposals, particularly in relation to ensuring that they're not self-proposed, as they could be with only having one nomination. They could be self-exalting sort of thing in that respect. So I'd be supportive of the proposals that we have in front of us. We do have many thousands of people across the borough that are not recognised regularly. We don't realise until you're in the position that I'm currently in, thankfully, how many people are out there who actually go out and help other people, and they're not recognised, honoured at all. And to be honest, we in Nuneaton and Bedworth, we don't recognise our citizens as much as we should do. You go to any other areas within the county, and quite regularly there are nominations for recognition for various services, whether you're looking after an elderly, whether you're looking after children or whatever. Even for people just taking people to hospitals and things like that. We have thousands of people who are not recognised, and hopefully this would give opportunity, if it's in that regard, to recognise those people as well. So I'd welcome that, but with the exception that we take a seconder or something on that basis, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I have a few amendments to move in light of some points of debate. But I'd like to start by saying that actually one of the concerns that I've had historically is that by leaving things totally within the gift of the sitting mayor means that it is a rather haphazard approach, and that sometimes it can be down to whoever is in favour of the mayor at the time, or is known to the mayor. And there are, as Councillor Clark says, a number of people who we just don't know about out there. We can't physically get to every single person, but there have been years when none have been issued or publicised, etc. And I think that's a great shame. So I think the whole idea about putting this on a whole policy footing actually removes some of the discretion from the mayor, rightfully so, where it should be, and would enable the mayor to retain that discretion where necessary. So leaving an ad hoc mayoral award as part of that would cover what Councillor Clark is saying, that it wouldn't have to necessarily go through the whole process, but we shouldn't just leave it down to the mayor of the time for their year, because not every mayor is, let's be honest, from historical practice, not every mayor has been as proactive as some of us would like. Current company excluded, of course, Councillor Clark. So, based on some of the debate, my first amendment is on page 14 at 2.2, that delegated authority be given to the Director of Customer and Corporate Services, and then insert and Cabinet Member for Finance and Corporate. Because if we are having a separate mayoral award, the Civic award will need a separate, presumably, badge to go with it if the mayor wants to keep one reserved specifically for his usage. That may have an implication, and so I'm sure the Cabinet Member would be delighted to look at those particular issues. At page 16, at the end of paragraph 12, where it says any member of the public may put forward an individual for a civic honour together with an explanation of why they should be considered, I think we should change it from individual to an individual or group, because there may be a group of people, and I think we should also amend any other reference in there to individuals or groups. What I was actually I only just spotted that, but the substantive issue was no self-nominations will be accepted I think that needs to be written in there as explicit, so that people don't think I can get away with putting myself forward, and we will do it. And then under D, schedule of awards, after the Civic Award of Merit, I think we need to insert another paragraph, which would be the ad hoc mayoral award, at the discretion of the mayor without referral to the subcommittee. I think that would then cover Councillor Clark's point, but also put it on a policy footing that is accepted. And then under the Civic Award of Merit, where it says the Civic Award of Merit is intended for any citizen for conduct or service deemed worthy of recognition by local people, insert for services to charity, comma, their locality or community, which I think gives it a scope that it's more local, and then the fact that you've got the freedom of the borough is for something which is a borough-wide basis. So it gives something like a bit of a distinction, like you would have with the BEM, the MBE, the OBE, the CBE. It's all differing levels of scope of influence, shall we say. Would that, and then also E, contact details of person proposing the nominee and seconder. Those are the points that I picked up. Would those be acceptable as amendments by everyone? So I'm seeing no dissent, so we can accept that as a friendly amendment. Oh, Councillor Kovacevic.
I mean, it's not dissent at all. Just on paragraph 12, to ask for a seconder as well. So any member of the public may put forward an individual for a civic honour. This must also then receive a seconder, you know, in writing ideally, with their reasons as well. I think that's the only omission that I thought I would like to see, but everything else happy to get on board with.
We'll add it there and add it to the appendix as well.
Okay. Phil said that we'll cover that in both 12 and E. Okay. So if everyone seems happy with that, I'll move it to the vote. I think the cold is actually beating people into submission tonight. All those in favour of the recommendations as amended? That's carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to any other items. There is one item that I would like to raise, and that is, and after a great deal of thought and consideration, I would like to propose that this committee put forward to the Chief Executive and convene an extraordinary council to award the freedom to make a freeman of the borough, Dave Leach, given his extraordinary service to this council over 27 years. I think the impact that he has had quietly and discreetly behind the scenes, no mayor would have done anything. They would have perhaps handed over the cheque and attended the events, but those all require organisation and mastery of detail, and I have to say I think Dave is an exemplary embodiment of what this borough does and what this council does, and I think he would be delighted to be awarded the freedom of the borough. Does that receive a seconder? Well, it's received a seconder, third, fourth, fifth. Any speaker? Councillor Clark, as you've worked with him most recently, then Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to second it, or third, fourth it, wherever I'm in that row. What I would say is Dave Leach has been an absolute stalwart of this council and its mayoralty for many years. He's also assisted many members, even when they're new members coming onto the council. He's made himself known to them and been there for any questions that they may have. And many members have made use of that, both on all sides of the council. So I think he should be recognised for his work in helping members deliver services for the public across the whole of the borough, but in particular his role as the Mayor's mace bearer and organiser in relation to events that we've had of late. He's been absolutely a stalwart in ensuring that those events go off without a hitch on many occasions, so that they are seamless in their delivery. and the council has looked at its best when it should be, when we're seen, but being seen by the public, both in the borough and outside the borough. And Dave has done that to a plumb. And I'm sure he'll be a big loss to the council's asset in that regard, because, as I say, and he's still there now, and he's said if anybody wants to contact him, you know, we're able to do that. If anybody got a question of procedure, he's more than happy to help us if we need that. So I do welcome that, and I'm happy to support that proposal, Chairman.
Thank you. Indeed, we saw him on Saturday, didn't we? And he was still involved in the community, and he still said he found it strange not having to get up in the morning, but he was there at a charity function with his good lady wife supporting good causes in the borough. Councillor Golby.
Yeah, Dave has been quietly and diligently and without fanfare for many years working in the background, and it's quite right that we actually do this now to say thank you for that. He's had some testing times, I'm sure, with depending on who is in the chair, but we all have a good idea about that, and I think he's got through it with absolute grace, and he's never put a foot wrong in that respect. He's one of the best officers that I've had encounters with in this council, and he helped me lots and lots and lots when I was a new member, and he particularly pays particular attention to make sure everybody feels welcome and everybody knows what they need to do, and he's always full of a joke and a laugh when you see him out. So yeah, it's definitely quite right that we all do this, and I think you will probably get full support from the full council as well. I'd be very surprised if you didn't anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. Any other member? Councillor Kovetkovic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would echo exactly what the previous two speakers have said. I would add myself that when I was first elected, it was Dave Leach who kind of, you know, he was one of the first to come and congratulate me and welcome me into the council, as I'm sure he did with all new members at the time, and often would offer words of wisdom. And he would also have a way to make sure that he conveyed the gravitas of the office that we sort of hold. And to make sure that we didn't embarrass ourselves, more importantly. And I think the quiet dignity of this council is often represented by Dave Leach. You know, he was that sort of almost figurehead that we had, and a lot of the systems and protocols we have in place are there because of him in terms of the civic side of what we do. And I think, you know, we owe him a great debt of thanks, because, you know, without the Dave Leaches of this world, quite honestly, you know, this could become a farcical sort of place very, very quickly. And it's hit people like Dave that keep it on a very much on an even keel and ensure that the dignity is recognised by members of the public, by the councillors and by committee chairs, because I know he has a way, he's not in your face, but he was always there to make sure that the things were adhered to and things were done correctly. So yeah, let's do it, let's make it happen for him.
I don't think he has. Does he get the right to drive sheep through the town centre? Well, we can give him permission to fish from the bridge. I know he'd enjoy that. In all seriousness, he is a keen angler by all accounts. Most recently, with the demise of Her late Majesty the Queen, myself and the Mayor were heavily involved in that. And I have to say, without his guidance and support there with us at such an important national occasion, we would have got through it, but we wouldn't have done it with as much aplomb and style and grace and dignity as only Dave could bring to the job. So I'll bring that to a conclusion. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. That is carried. There being no other items of business that I'm aware of, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.